Hey everybody, welcome to Inside Quest. Our goal, as I hope you know at this point, is to take you inside the minds of the world's most effective thinkers so that you can learn with ease what they have oftentimes learned with great difficulty. If you pay attention, I promise you our guests will help you acquire the behaviors and thought patterns, and it is the thought patterns that really matter, that you're going to need to be successful in whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish with your own life. Today's guest actually reminds me of Kane from the TV show Kung Fu. He is a real-life nomad that travels the land teaching people martial arts with nothing more than what he can carry on his back. I'm serious. Well, I don't know how often he gets caught up in the local tales of injustice. I do know that with over 50 years of training under his black belt and some seriously counterintuitive approaches to life, he's got a whole host of grasshopper moments to share with his students. Named as one of the top 100 trainers in the U.S. by Men's Journal, this former NCAA Division I wrestler and BJJ Pan American and World Championship gold medal winner has become a very part of the fabric of modern jiu-jitsu. His credentials include being the first American black belt under Helson Gracie, opening the first Gracie Jiu-Jitsu school on the East Coast, and being one of the original investors in the UFC. He was also the strength and conditioning coach for jiu-jitsu legend Royce Gracie and helped prepare him for his historic victory at UFC 1. His undeniable talents as a teacher have made him one of the most sought-after instructors in the world, and he's got the passport stamps to prove it. I'm telling you, just looking at this guy's travel itinerary gives me jet lag. In addition to the countless workshops that he gives all over the globe, he has trained the likes of famed UFC commentator and longtime MMA practitioner Joe Rogan, as well as multiple branches of the U.S. government. His highly effective and insanely creative approach to strength and conditioning has also seen him featured in countless books and magazines, including Men's Health, Muscle Media, and The Naked Warrior. Please help me in welcoming the man who looks and performs better in his 60s than most people in their 20s, the American master of the Russian kettlebell, Steve Maxwell.
Good to see you. Thanks for having me on the show.
It is truly a pleasure.
Well, thanks. Wow.
Well, let me ask you, because being a wrestler, I'm sure that the discipline that wrestling gave you has been well used in your life. Why is it that wrestling, in a seemingly unique way, gives people just an insane amount of mental discipline?
It's one of the most rugged sports that you could possibly do. I don't know whether you've ever actually got on the mat, but it can be incredibly exhausting. And it's funny because I sucked at everything else as a kid. You know, I wasn't good at baseball. I didn't have the hand-eye coordination. It's too small for football. I was too slow for track and field. In those days, there was no gymnastics. Soccer did not exist. But I had instant success with wrestling. And, you know, in a lot of countries, wrestling is looked upon with almost a religious fervor. And I don't know, I always just found that wrestling for me was something I was really good at. And the ruggedness of the sport, the preparation, the mental discipline, you very quickly learn how to, you know, control your diet and your food intake. And, you know, I know that Quest started as a way of helping people with food problems.
Yes.
Well, when I was just a little boy, like 10 years old, I already had that dialed in. just learning to make weight and so forth. It's a big problem with people in America. You know, I was just reading 48% of American females are now obese, and about 38% of American men. So we are one of the world's leaders in obesity and overweight. So anyway, for me, wrestling gave me that iron discipline.
How much do you think that people can really hone that discipline? Because when you're talking about the percentages of America that are overweight or obese, I start asking the question, okay, how much of this stuff can you really sort of reach into the matrix and pull people out, and people that watch the show understand that's, so I think in movie terms. And when I saw that movie, it gave me the lexicon to understand what it means to be trapped in your own mindset, which to me, the Matrix is just a big metaphor for your own mindset. So people, they pull the wool over their own eyes. They have a certain set of beliefs. Those beliefs are very limiting, and they can never get out. So I hear, hey, wrestling is this tremendously impactful way for people to really cultivate discipline, which is different than handing you discipline, right? They cultivate their discipline. And I wonder how many people that get that discipline, that use wrestling to cultivate it, what percentage is that of people that encounter wrestling? So does wrestling just filter off like a huge amount of people who aren't able to develop that discipline? Or could you, as many kids as you could get into that kind of discipline, would they come out the other side having really increased their ability to control their own mind?
Well, you know, there's a catch to that because a lot of it's unsustainable. You know, for me, I was able to hold on to that discipline that I developed, but you wouldn't believe the guys that I went to school with.
What they look like today in terms of weight gain?
Yeah, wow.
That's interesting.
Guts and butts. It's very disappointing. Some of these guys I really worshipped and put on a pedestal, and they weren't able to sustain it through life.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I think maybe just all the self-sacrifice and so forth. They just, once they finished and they didn't have to do anymore, they just let go.
What was your trick?
For me, I got into jiu-jitsu, another weight class sport. So it was always, I always wanted to be as strong as I could, be as light as I could. That really helps a lot. So sports and martial arts, you know, all the grappling sports, anything with the weight class, that was my savior.
Because you had an ongoing contact point that kept you clear-headed, or like
yeah, I always had a goal. I always had a reason to sustain low percent body fat. I wasn't a bodybuilder. I wasn't a fitness model. You know, I wasn't looking to build gee-whiz muscles and be the cover of a Men's Health magazine, you know. I never got into that ego lifting. Right. All the lifting, all the training was always geared towards performance. But my performance was also based on my weight, because I knew if I gained weight, I had these big, giant guys with great leverage. You know, you really give yourself a handicap.
Do you think at all about identity and value system and how that drives either your behavior or others' behaviors?
Well, I do believe that our outer self, our body, is a manifestation of our inner belief systems. The inner image that you have of yourself is pretty much what you see on the outside.
So how do you deal with that with your clients? Are there like a set of beliefs that any new client, like here are some internal things you need to be thinking about yourself or the activity or whatever that'll serve you?
Yeah, I'm also really big into the symbolism of like different body parts and different problems.
Really?
Like, you know, for example, I used to have a stiff neck a lot, and then I read where it had to do with stubbornness, and fear of new ideas, fear of not wanting to look at other people's ideas. Once I understood that and would make different affirmations, all of my neck problems pretty much went away.
So, I mean, so many people suffer from chronic pain. Walk us through briefly, I mean, this could be incredibly useful to somebody. Walk us through briefly, what were some of the high-level physical things that you were doing to rehab it, and more importantly, what are you doing in your mind with the internal narrative during that time? Well,
one of the things that really helped when I was still in college, I went to a certified rolfer. Have you ever heard of rolfing?
No.
It was invented by a former biochemist, Ida Rolf, PhD. Her son was stricken with the great polio epidemic during the 50s. And she went to specialist after specialist to get this kid fixed, and nothing would work. So out of sheer frustration, she started literally molding her son's legs and straightening him out. And he was completely cured of all the crippling defects of polio. I was rolfed by that man, her son. Wow. And he did an incredible things for me. And he was the first guy to alert.
And what, just like, it's tactile?
Dude, it was the most painful thing I ever had in my life, man. It was like, wow. And of course, the more out of alignment you are, it's called postural integration. According to Rolfers, active release, and so forth, our connective tissue is moldable, malleable, and can be adjusted to put you back in alignment with gravity. However, you also have to start to change your movement patterns too. And all this is affected by your brain and your psyche, the way you believe and so forth. But it initially got me out of pain, all the residual pain in my neck. And then I realized just, you know, I had all these realizations. Like once I started reading, there's one woman in particular, there's one author, Louise Hayes. She talks about the metaphysical manifestations of pain and how it relates to your activities. So while Western medicine is looking just at the body, you know, people like Louise Hay and so forth are looking at the total picture. They're seeing that there's a spiritual side to this. Our beliefs form an awful lot of what happens in this physical world. I learned that early. I mean, if you go on a wrestling mat or a jiu-jitsu mat and you look out across there and you believe you're going to lose, you're going to get your ass kicked, basically. So, you got to believe.
Yeah, we just had Sugar Ray Leonard on the show, and he was saying exactly the same thing. He said, if I look in the mirror and I see Sugar Ray Leonard, I know I'm going to win. If I look in the mirror, however, and I see Sugar Ray the civilian, I know I'm going to lose. And that's all in his mind, right? And he said, look, it had to do with preparation and all of that. Like, it's not just sort of a momentary I wake up and I'm either in the mood or I'm not. But it really speaks to something that's incredibly powerful to me, that control of your mind is first and foremost. People ask, okay, you're a nutrition company, why are you doing a show about the mind? And to me, like the answer is obvious. We're trying to end metabolic disease for one very simple reason. We want to help people live a better, more fulfilling life. But if we're attacking only the body and we're not addressing the mind, then you're really not setting people up to do anything extraordinary with their life. And at the end of the day, right, like that's the goal, is to help people do something that they deem to be extraordinary. Don't pass any judgment on what that is. But that they have their sights set on something they're trying to accomplish. And it goes back to what you're saying about functional fitness, right? Like, I want to get better and stronger at being on the mat, because jiu-jitsu is what informs what I'm trying to get better at. And the language that we use is, between you and who you want to become is a set of skills. And you want to acquire those skills and then put them to the test, right? If there's nothing for which you're garnering these skills, you have no idea what skills to gain. So really getting down to the specifics of gaining those skills and then being able to apply them to something. But at the end of the day, it starts with the mind. So if you're not doing things to really sharpen your mind, which is why I was so fascinated by what you were talking about with wrestling and hearing you talk about that, not just today, but in some of the other articles and things that you've done, is really, really interesting, the discipline. So one thing I liken it to is I don't like working out and enjoy it. I don't, whatever the runner's high is that people get, I don't get that. But what I do get is the credibility with myself of showing up and doing something that I don't want to do in service of something greater, right? A goal or whatever.
Just because you have a certain set of belief systems doesn't mean you still don't do the physical preparation also. It all goes hand in hand. But the higher mind will lead to the right steps, the right time. I don't believe in accidents or fate or any of that.
I have a quote from you on that very topic, which is, I think the universe runs with absolute mathematical certainty. What does that mean?
I believe that everything happens the way it should happen. Every disaster that ever happened in my life should have happened exactly the way it did. Therefore, I have no regrets about anything I did. Now, if I were able to go back with the knowledge that I have now, would I have done something different? Perhaps. But I don't regret that I didn't.
Sure.
That's why it's really important not to think in the past, to live in the past, to beat yourself up over the past. I try to completely forget the past, live in the present, but look forward to the future.
That's really interesting. Why do you try to forget the past? What about the positive things?
It still keeps you from living right now, enjoying the moment. You start to get all wrapped up in, past victories or pleasures and so forth.
Can we get really weird for a second?
Yeah, man, I'm weird as they come.
All right, dude, this I know. These guys don't even know where we're going yet. It's about to get really
I live out of a backpacking hotel.
Yes, and we're going to get to
That's pretty weird,
that.
Man.
Yes, it is. It's amazing, and this may be a good thread to that. So I have, honestly, I believe there's something odd in the true sense of just not being very common about the way that my brain works. And I rapidly forget about things in the past. So something has to be truly a peak emotional experience for me to retain it for very long.
Me too.
Now, I think that helps me not get stuck, right? So one thing, like if we all have a superpower, my superpower is the ability to change. So I have no attachment to the past or to past versions of myself. For two reasons. One, I don't pride myself on that, so I have a part of my identity is constant growth, which means I'm always moving away from the person that I am today. And then the other is, just as a function of my brain, I don't have very bright memories. And as you go back even just a few years, it's virtually just sort of a cloud, and it's only these sort of pinpoint moments. Do you think that it sounds like you have a similar thing. Do you think that that serves you? Is that something that you wish you had more of?
Have you ever heard of being ruined by your success?
Yes.
Well, let's just take working out, something we're all, most people are pretty familiar with. Let's say a guy, he starts out, let's say, a particular training regimen, and he gets really good success. And then he stays stuck in that, because in the past, it produced results, and the guy stays stuck. And now it's no longer producing the results that the guy wants, but he still stays stuck in that model, that protocol, whatever. Same thing happens with business. If he would open the mind and explore other ways of doing things, he might find that he would get even better success or more success. Or at least when it's no longer working, try something else. I think that a lot of times, a lot of us get stuck in certain mindsets because we were initially successful. So that's one reason I don't like to hold on to the past too much.
And do you have tips or techniques that you use to stay open? You said, I'm a student. It was a nice, simple quote. You actually said it 3 times. I'm a student, I'm a student, I'm a student. I thought that's really powerful. Is that something that you try to drive into your own mind, to always be open to new ideas?
I do like to learn new things. I teach a lot, but I do like to be a student. I like to be at the foot of masters. I seek masters out. I will find guys and study with them. I want to see what they got. One of the things that really impressed me early, I have a lot of difficulty taking advice from a 20 or 30 something. They don't know what they don't even know yet. Sure. Even guys in their 40s, it's still pretty young. I think I reached my physical peak in my early to mid 40s.
Wow.
I was really strong and felt unbelievable. Each decade would be like a little bump down. But I always sought out guys that have been through to the other side. I want to see what that guy in the 60s, in his 70s, in his 80s, I want to see those guys. They've been through it. I can trust what that guy says. Example, my jiu-jitsu master Elliot Gracie. He was in his mid-90s when he finally died. But that guy was still getting on the mat. He was still a spry old man.
Talk to me about the collective conscious. Because you said that you try to reject all notions. You don't go to funerals, you don't go to weddings, don't celebrate birthdays, no Christmas. What does that mean to you? Have
you ever been in a room with a group of people and some guy comes in and it's like a cloud just came into the room? It's like the whole collective feeling just goes down. The energy goes down because this person is just really negative.
Right.
By the same token, sometimes you'll be in a room and a guy will come in and it's like a bright light. It's like, whoa, and everybody is lifted up. Well, people's thoughts can affect your mood,
for sure,
the way you think, and not all our thoughts are our own. So you can very much be affected by the collective energy.
A little bit deeper on that. So not all of our thoughts are our own. What do you mean by that? Because a lot of people who watch the show are at that stage in their life where they're really trying to think about something differently and they feel a lot of obligation to family, to whatever. So for them to understand what you mean by that, I think it'd be incredibly powerful.
Thoughts are energy, and you put them into action especially if you speak them into words. Very powerful. There's all part of that, what they call the manifestation process. These are your own types of thinking, your own things that you come up with. But thoughts enter our mind all the time, usually in the form of fear or doubt or worry. These are not from you. They're from something else. That's the collective. It takes eternal vigilance to get rid of those things.
How does that apply to, like, when you look at your nomadic life, you've really rejected sort of the standard American dream. A lot of the conventions that people feel just sort of, they are almost real, if you will, and that they are the only path to happiness. You've bunked all of that stuff, you put it all aside and are living a life that certainly is more authentic. And I would assume it has brought you more joy.
It just gets better all the time. Part of it was, getting rid of a lot of the fear and doubt. It gets a little scary out there, And but I'm always manifesting like really, really joyful experiences, meeting really nice people, get to be in a cool show like this, just all sorts of things all the time. But it wasn't always that way, I used to have my trials and tribulations and my share of negative experiences and so forth. But
what's the mechanism of getting rid of fear and doubt?
A lot of this fear and doubt comes from the collective. And once you become aware of it, of like where all this negative crap is coming from, then you take steps to get rid of it. Realize, oh, that's not for me. I don't believe that. And of course, constant affirmation, meditation, prayer.
Do you know Dr. Daniel Amen?
I don't.
So he talks a lot about this in his book, Making a Good Brain Great, which is an amazing book. I highly recommend anyone read it. And he talks about that as ants, automatic negative thoughts. And
automatic negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Ants.
Yes.
And
he
like
says,
that.
like an ant, you have to squish them, get rid of them, all that stuff. And once, like you were saying, once it's on your radar, you realize how pervasive it is. And it's like in any day, you might think, Jesus, how many negative thoughts? I mean, literally untold. I'd never want to count. It'd be far too depressing. But once you realize, okay, you have these things going, if you let them go unchecked, which I think is what you mean by the collective. If you're letting all these thoughts go unchecked, they begin to just, through sheer volume, fill up the background of how you view the world. There's an awesome quote by Einstein. I've talked about it on here before. Einstein said, the most important decision any person has to make is whether the universe is working for you or against you.
Or against you.
And I thought, wow, that's
half
so
full, half empty, right?
Yeah. It's really, really fascinating to me.
I have an acronym. FEAR. Future events that aren't real.
Yes.
You're basically imaging something that isn't real,
Yes.
but yet you're feeling these negative emotions.
Yeah. You told a really awesome story, and it cuts to the heart of everything I hold dear. It was a really powerful interview, and you said, look, I met this Buddhist monk, and he has a vision of how the world is, as a metaphor. And he said,
it was a metaphor.
Basically, human beings are walking around in a dark room, bumping into each other. And ultimately, one person becomes aware that there's a door. And he wants to get out completely and desperately. And he does. And then there's another person who wants to get out just as desperately, but they want to take everyone with them. And you said, I'm that man.
Yeah, that's the guy. Yeah, that was at London Real. But no, it was an actual Buddhist guy that told me about that little metaphor. And it was like, wow, yeah, I want to be that guy, not just to find the door and get out, but help be that little bit of light. I was just reading Mind Over Muscle by Jigoro Kano. He was the founder of Judo. He took and organized an educational system and took all of there were so many different martial arts and jiu-jitsu styles in Japan. And he organized them into the Kodokan Judo. And he was a real educator. And he wanted to help enlighten people and bring people up. And he said a man's worth is, what is he giving back to society? How is he helping his fellow man? That's your true value, not how much money you can make, right, what kind of fancy car you can drive, what kind of big house that you have. What are you doing to help uplift your fellow human beings? And I always had that belief system.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful.
Which transcends any religion.
Yeah, definitely. And so the main focus of the show, in the words that we use, is to free people from the matrix. And so when I heard that story of the monk who's talking about people bumping around in the dark and wanting to help people get out, I thought that that really is the driving force behind what the show is, and bringing people on and asking questions like, how are you going to be the light for those people? What techniques do you use in your seminars, classes, personal relationships, anything? What tools do you use to help people see a new way of being?
Well, all any of us can do is just be a good example. Through your own example, people may become inspired. So all I can do is just tell them the way I believe, the way I think, and try to be a good example of that philosophy. And then maybe someone will say, yeah, wow, that's really good. I want to do that too.
What has meditation taught you?
To shut out the noisy mind. There's all sorts of meditations. It doesn't have to be sitting in a Zen, position. One of my favorites is what I call Zen running, where you just go, like you mentioned that you don't like running and stuff, but when I run, I don't run for speed. I don't run for any particular time. I don't care about how fast I go. I don't measure my heart rate. I do pay attention to the breath, 100% to the breath. And the breath takes care of everything.
Do you still try to breathe through your nose while you're running?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, if you're breathing any other way, you're doing yourself more harm than good. Any mouth breathing is extremely harmful because you're using the upper lobes of the lungs. That puts you in a panic state. Upper lobes of the lungs are like a sympathetic state, fight or flight. You want to try to stay out of that sympathetic state. I also try to stay non-adrenalized when I work out. When you train with that, or even worse, it's called Valsalva sync. It's like involuntary holding of the breath. Even if you're doing something strenuous, it's always maintaining proper breathing. Once you get into that fight or flight, you over-adrenalize yourself. When I run, it's a Zen-like experience. I just focus 100% on my breath. I'm not thinking of anything else. And then everything else takes care of itself. It's very nice. It's a movement experience. And I try to run either barefoot or I'll wear very minimal shoes so I have the proprioceptive feel on my feet. 70% of all your proprioceptive awareness comes from the soles of your feet. Very stimulating to the brain. When you cover your feet with a big, thick shoe, you're not getting that vital information. It affects your gait and everything else. So, yeah, for me, there's many forms. I do a lot of moving meditations.
Do you do any seated?
Yeah, sometimes I can sit and meditate. Sometimes I use visualization. I'll use a visualization / meditation just as I'm falling asleep at night. That's when your subconscious mind is most open to programming. So we use this anyway. People use it all the time. They program their subconscious mind with all sorts of thoughts, and then their life is what they ordered up. It's like going to a fulfillment center. Your mind will engineer events to happen exactly in accordance to what you've been thinking. So better to have control of that fulfillment house. So I'll visualize as I fall asleep sometimes of events and things I would like to have happen.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think people really underestimate the power of the mind, for sure.
So
and you look at you and you see what great shape you're in, and seeing some of your videos, and I know you're not trying to push the limits, but it's still pretty impressive, the things that you're doing today. And if that's part of the secret, it's super effective.
Well, I used to be a bit of an extremist, but then as you begin to, get past that half-century mark, you realize that's definitely not sustainable, and it's a step in the wrong direction. So I've pretty much withdrawn from extremism in everything that I do. I'm taking the more moderate road. That includes diet, exercise, even my thoughts and my thinking. Although some people would say, well, you're pretty extreme with this minimalism.
Yeah.
But to tell the God's honest truth, I had the 4-story brownstone house, beautiful house. I had all the material. I had a gym full of equipment. Everything you could imagine, I had all this stuff, It doesn't necessarily bring happiness at all, I still have my miseries and, my woes.
Sure.
There was some times where I would come home, I'd be sitting, I'm thinking, is this it? This is it? And I would almost wish I was back at work. But then I'd be at work and sometimes I'd say, man, is this it? I just want to be at home by myself.
Right.
You see what I mean? It was no peace.
Do you ever think that now?
Nah, I'm pretty much doing exactly what I want to do now. I really like it. And then I just became very content with very little. You're always wealthy when you don't have big needs.
Right, yeah.
You don't need a lot of money. There's nothing wrong with money. But that's not my goal, to just manifest that type of thing. Time is as valuable as anything. So now I have a lot more time to myself. I can read, meditate, affirm.
Right. All right. As a guy who's made so many profoundly different choices than the mainstream, what's your definition of a life well lived?
To be able to go to your death with no regrets. People that on the dying bed are all full of regret and so forth. That's not a life well.
And how do you avoid it?
We all have made, we've all made decisions maybe that weren't the best, but they were the only decision you can make at that time. You just got to let go of all that. You got to completely let go, so that when you do come to your end, and you meet your maker, if you believe in something higher, you just absolutely can have no regret whatsoever. Things were the way they were, and you just accept yourself for exactly who and what you were.
That's perfect. Steve, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks a lot.
Pleasure
Thanks
to
for
have
having me
you.
on the show, man.
And where can people find you online?
The website is maxwellsc.com. S for strength, C for conditioning. And I have a lot of really cool downloadable videos, instructionals on all kinds of workouts, breath work, mobility, body weight training, kettlebells, all that kind of stuff.
All right, guys, go to his website, check him out. The one thing I really encourage you to do is read his blog. Some of the most interesting things that he touched on here, he goes into much more detail there, and it is absolutely incredible. You want to talk about not getting trapped in the world's, call it the cultural consciousness. He's got so much amazing advice for finding the path that's right for you, doing the things that you want to do that resonate with you. You guys write in all the time. People are pressuring you to do things that don't necessarily make sense for you. They don't make you feel good. They're going to leave you living that life full of regrets that should you make it to that inglorious end that I suppose all comes for us despite my best attempts to fight against it. If you want to truly have lived the life without any regrets, you've got to find that path that's right for you. And that's something that I think that Steve is uniquely capable of delivering to people. So go in, check it out. It will be amazing. This is a weekly show, guys. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And we are looking to see who you guys want on the show. So be sure to reach out to us on social at Inside Quest. Tell us who you want to see on here. Other amazing people like this guy. We're trying to get them all the time. So thank you for joining us, and until next week, my friends, be legendary. Take care. Steve, thank you so much, man. That was an absolute pleasure. Hey everybody, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Inside Quest. We don't take a single listener for granted. As you know, our goal is to pull as many human beings out of the matrix as humanly possible. And to help us do that, if you like this episode, please go to iTunes, leave a review, like it, and if you loved it, which I know you do, please share it with people. The more people that we can get paying attention to the show, the more guests that we can get on, and the better that we can serve you guys. If you want to become an insider and you want to get access to exclusive content, be sure to go to InsideQuest.com, sign up for the newsletter. We put stuff in there that isn't available anywhere else. We promise not to spam you or waste your time, so be sure to go there and sign up. And then we're super active socially, so if you guys want to follow me personally, you can do that at @TomBilyeu. My last name is spelled B as in Bravo, ILYEU. And of course, you can follow at Inside Quest as well. Engage with us. Let us know what you think. Send in guest submissions. And, oh, dear God, please, if you're in the Los Angeles area, we want you to come and sit in the audience and be a part of this community. It's amazing to get a chance to meet everybody. So come on in, say what's up, and let's change lives. All right, my friends, until next time, be legendary. Take care.